It is Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to this podcast, Season 7, Episode 13. Get your crying towels ready. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario. I'm joined by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there, kids.
And we're also joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Right, neither one of you are crying enough for today's
But it was a joyful ending. All good things, they say, you know?
Yeah, only Peanut Hamper wasn't available.
That's right.
All right, so let's dig into the fact check. I got quite a few things here. So Peter Davison played Tristan, the mischievous younger brother to Siegfried on All Creatures Great and Small, which, if you don't know that show, it was a book first, and then it was a semi-autobiographical PBS show based on James Herriot, who wrote the book. He was a country vet in Yorkshire back in the day, back in the 1930s. So that's why, you know, Tristan was sort of the Loki of the show kind of thing, if you think about it that way. So when he became the Doctor, it was like, what to me, right? So, and then following up on the longest distance between sequels, Bambi seems to be the winner. If you remember in the original Bambi, the Vogons attack the planet, and while Bambi and Thumper are at the bar getting a pint. Yeah, so Bambi from 1942 and Bambi 2 in 2006. That's a 64-year stretch.
So the thing we said was like, best sequel, longest distance. So
I just went with sequel. The homework was to figure out the longest sequel kind of thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's good, because now we have facts and data. I do not recall.
Bambi and Bambi 2 are good movies, arguably.
Have you seen Bambi 2? I have not.
I have not either. I can't remember the last time I saw Bambi.
Somehow either, Bambi's mom returns. Is that the plot? Revenge of Bambi's Mom, I think, is the subtitle.
Stepmother gives her an apple, and yeah, I don't know. And apparently the Return to Oz is technically not a sequel. However, that was 1939 to 1985, which is a 46-year stretch. So
it sounds like a fun debate on whether or not it's actually a sequel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I don't even remember if Return to Oz is based on one of the actual books, because he wrote a bunch of books about Ozma and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Mary Poppins, 1964, starring Julie Andrews, was played by that woman I've just forgotten her name.
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt. Mary Poppins Returns in 2018. That was 54 years. Blade Runner, 1982, and Blade Runner 2049. So 1982 and 2017 was 35 years. And Top Gun is actually greater, because it was 36 years, as we talked about last week, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, cool. And we were struggling with Jude Law's character name on Skeleton Crew. He is listed as Jod Nawood on IMDb, or just Jod. And he refers to himself when he introduces himself. I watched it the other day, and I think it was on the previously seen thing that they last time on. He introduces himself as Jod Nawood. So, yeah. So we'll go with that, okay?
Do we have to call him that? Can we just call him Jude Law? Jude Naboo was what I came up with as the closest.
And occasionally I try to catch up on some of the stuff that's in my feed when I've got nothing to watch. And so I was in the middle of, I guess it's Last Jedi. And DJ, which is the character played by Benicio del Toro, gets paid a large sum of credits for turning in Finn and Rose, and for telling Chrome Dome, I've forgotten her name now, about the what's it, Phantoma is her name? Is that the
Phasma, I think.
Phasma, yeah. About the rebel escape. And as you remember, they were shooting taking pot shots and shooting them as they tried to escape to the hidden rebel. Again, another rebel planet that was uncharted, right?
Yeah.
So they must have done some cover-ups back in the... as long as Voldemort doesn't find out and sends what's his name? Voldemort 2 after it.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's the fun packed.
The underworld is, I guess, where hard currency still exists in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and we mentioned so we have credits, and then we also have the because I guess credits they can't be traced, right? It's like cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because you'd mentioned there's gold-plated latinum in Star Trek as well, right? So yeah, and Romulan ale, I guess. And tribbles. You can trade in tribbles, too.
Yummy.
Right. Well, that ends our fun-filled fact check, and we'll move on to the fun-filled headlines. And this is one I put up here for Jonathan as soon as I found out about it. But Apple TV Plus is renewing Silo for Season 3 and Season 4, which the final will be Season 4. So even Tim Cook tweeted about that, which I thought interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to land this plane, because the second book in the series is kind of a prequel.
Oh, is it?
I wonder if they will do all of that, or if they might do sort of a little bit what they're doing this season, where they kind of jump back and forth, or it'll be interesting to see. I mean, people care about this current cast, and if you have Rebecca Ferguson as an executive producer and star, I'm guessing she wants to be wrapped in 4 years so she can move on to other things, right?
Yeah, which she actually did say that about why she didn't go back to the Mission Impossible thing. I saw an interview with her, and she just sort of said, I want to do other things. I didn't want to be, and she said that filming, and they all say this, filming movies is basically you commit to like a year of your life to do nothing else but sit around in a trailer waiting for your chance to come on and say 4 things, which she wasn't looking forward to do in a Tom Cruise movie, right? So
who would be
her role? Yeah, who would be? Well, I guess if he pays you enough money, I suppose anybody would be, right? But you could work on a side hustle building Vision OS apps while you're waiting, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess maybe we'll stay tuned for Silo Prophecy, the next series to come out, right? So,
yeah. I mean, who knows? There is a sort of larger, how did they all get there kind of story that needs to be sort of fleshed out. And obviously we know there's more silos, because we know we're right now in the show, we're dealing with 18 and 17. So what about 1 through 16? And is there more after 18? So
what? Are we doing the George Lucas math thing again, or what?
Yeah, really. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of can land all that in theoretically, 2 more seasons, 10 more episodes. But I mean, it's good to know that they're committed to it, because obviously it seems to be going well for them.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, over to you for the big reveal trailer.
Yeah, so we had been counting down all week. This was our sort of early Christmas present from the good folks at Warner Brothers and DC. We got the first trailer for Superman Legacy today, so we popped that up on the old Slack channel, and everybody had a look, and we had little chats about it. But I mean, it looks pretty epic, grand, spectacle. It's got a vibe to it. It's very, it just seems very grand. Although interesting that the trailer kind of revolves around the episode. The trailer starts with Superman collapsing and bleeding and panting in the snow, and then we sort of flash around to all these different sort of scenes. We don't get any dialogue other than him talking to Crypto the Superdog, which everyone's freaking out about online. The price of the first appearance of Crypto the Superdog in comics went through the roof again today. So not that it wasn't already extremely valuable, but it even went up even more today. I mean, this was jam-packed full of stuff. Before we get into sort of all the little who's and what's and where's, Jaime, what'd you think?
I thought it was quite the spectacle. I think you chose the right word there. It's a lot, which makes me wonder how they're going to fit everything in here. It's definitely not an origin story kind of movie. It looks like they're just going to put you right in the middle of the action. I assume here. I mean, did you catch that? I mean, there's just like Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg kind of thing from this trailer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, they kind of give you a little taste of everything, but they don't really, you don't really, like, there's no, like I say, there's very little dialogue. It's just a tiny bit of dialogue. And they kind of show you a lot of characters, a lot of action, a lot of stuff happening, but again, it's sizzle over steak, right? It's, you're kind of just like, ooh, pretty.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting. Well, James Gunn has been hinting about this coming out for the last couple of days, so I follow him on Blue Sky and other things. But it is for a second there, when he's doing the Clark Kent look, he almost looked like a young Tom Hanks too, right? So which just kind of caught my eye a bit. But and I did go back and check the one scene that I thought might be the Eaton Center, but it isn't. It's somewhere else. Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. My only visceral reaction was it was almost like Snowy instead of what I envisioned Crypto as, right? So anyway, yeah. I always thought Crypto was a short-haired,
I mean, they have portrayed Crypto in a bunch of different ways over the years in the comics, depending on who's drawing it and everything else, and then obviously in cartoons and other things we've seen. I did used to read the Superboy comics when I was a kid, because that was because that's where Crypto would show up. But was the idea that he was put in the craft with the baby at the time, or what's Crypto's origin story? Again, it depends on iteration. Like, there's been so many variations over the years because like, they've rewritten all of Superman's stories over the years. They've also rewritten Crypto's.
Okay.
In some iterations, he's a dog from the planet, and in some cases, he's like another kind of alien being that takes the appearance of a dog just to make everybody on Earth a little more comfortable with what it looks like. So, yeah, I mean, the original origin is basically that his parents were like, he'll be lonely, we'll send him a dog. And they say that literally after the dramatic blast off of young Kal-El, there's a second pod that's got a dog in it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
But they also, again, over the years, they've done a few different things. And again, it's also, they've spawned other, there's a super cat, there's a super horse, there's a super dog, there's like all these different, there's a super ape, super birds, like there's been all kinds of creatures over the years too. But yeah, they've definitely tried a few different things, but in some comics, again, they've made Crypto much more modern where, like he rips people's limbs off and stuff. It can be quite the much more, I guess, not just a good puppy, but also a ferocious puppy and stuff. So, but yeah, it's just, it's those kinds of touches. It's the fact that, like, they're not shying away from kind of the fun, silly aspects, but are clearly playing it with a lot of reverence. I think it'll be an interesting balancing act, but if they can land it, I think it could be really impressive, because part of, just recently I was going through an old collection of books. Some place that I go to was selling stuff out, and I was reading just the covers of old Superboy and Superman, Adventure Comics, Action Comics, and stuff like that. And I said to the proprietor, I said, I don't collect these books per se. I don't collect like Silver Age, Golden Age, old-fashioned, the kitschy kind of old-fashioned comics. But when I read the covers, and they're so wonderfully fun and campy and inventive, and I just kind of want to sit and read them all because they just sound hilarious and weird and imaginative. And again, when I think of James Gunn, who is now the lead, this is his movie. He wrote it. He's directing it. He's kicking off the new DC universe. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I want quirky and loving and all the things that he kind of brought to the Guardians of the Galaxy that, shouldn't have worked but did. That's what I want. That's what I want in this stuff.
For sure, yeah. I'm trying to remember, so just quick sort of aside here. So at one point, I went to California for probably a WWDC sometime between 2010 and 2014, and there was a Superman movie that we went and watched, and for me it was like midnight. I ended up falling asleep. But what
was that?
What
Superman
would that have
Returns?
Yeah, it was a Brendan Routh one.
That's the only one he did.
2006. That's 2006. Oh,
that's the only one Brendan Routh did was Superman Returns, and that was
so what was who's the other Superman?
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill might have been Henry Cavill.
So that was Man of Steel.
Okay, yeah, I think that it was Man of Steel probably.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, because Brendan Routh just did Superman Returns, and then they were like, well, that didn't really land. Let's try rebooting it. So it was part of the Zack Snyderverse stuff that they did, the Henry Cavill stuff. What did you guys think? Your first look at our new Corn Sweat, the new Superman.
Yeah, it was interesting. I like the sort of I don't know. It's just a different take on the outfit, and every time there's a Superman, there's a different sort of approach to the costume, as it were, right? I mean, he's gone from wearing a blue shirt back in the old TV show to something that maybe out of like an X-Men almost kind of texture to it, Mm-hmm. So he always had to the Brandon Roth one and the Man of Steel sort of always had this weird, microfiberish, textured fabric, like almost like a snakeskin thing going. That was cool. I mean, different things like I think his father seems to be a different type style actor, not like a shiny Kevin Costner type guy, from what I could see. And we have Lex Luthor in this one again, right? So
yeah, Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. It's a tough character to play, I think, right?
It's hard because the idea is that he was just supposed to be a man and a genius who, really had it in for Superman, but I wonder if they can land that. That's always been the challenge, is that, in the end, he's just a human being. How do you find an equal, right?
Yeah, I like it. I like how they did it in Smallville, where he was just another kid in the school kind of thing, right? So, yeah, it was an interesting approach.
Favorite cameos, favorite glimpses we saw?
Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner. There were a lot of people, these sweet summer children on the interwebs, who, despite having large language models in Google and all these other things, are like, why does that Green Lantern, which good for them for recognizing it's a Green Lantern, have a jacked up haircut? What's wrong with James Gunn? It's like, do you not know the aggressively bad haircut of Guy Gardner? Like, it was absolutely, it's a thing.
Yeah.
You should know. You should learn your lore.
Guy Gardner is an all-timer for me. I've been waiting for somebody to do Guy Gardner, and when I had heard that they were casting Nathan, I was like, oh, that could be excellent. I mean, it looks absurd, but it's supposed to. The idea is that this is a guy who is so... he's so full of himself that he does not think he looks ridiculous. Like, he is supposed to be just an absolute narcissistic, egocentric psycho. And so
I can't imagine anybody in the real world like that,
it's hard to imagine, especially with a bad haircut.
Yeah, especially with a bad haircut. Yeah.
But yeah,
and strange colored skin.
That's the thing I think I'm most excited about for this. I mean, Crypto was a real banger, but yeah, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, and apparently he's going to carry that role over to the new HBO Lanterns series that they're doing. That's going to have Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan as well. So that's pretty exciting. I liked that we got to see a few other characters. We saw a glimpse of Hawk Girl. So that was kind of...
Oh, okay. I saw the Hawk. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've done a lot of iterations of Hawkman in different iterations of the live action over the years, including most recently the Black Adam movie had a Hawkman. But Hawk Girl, I think, is beloved by a bunch of people who are big fans of the Justice League cartoon that came out a number of years ago. I love that series. It was one of my favorite cartoons that's ever been made, and they did a great rendition of Hawk Girl there. And I love that they're taking advantage of the fact that they can have non-gender specific character there. People can kick up a fuss about the femification or whatever they want to call it, but that character's been around for 70 years, so shut up. And it's really kind of cool. And, and again, we also saw Mr. Terrific, who's a great character that's been in a lot of the Justice Society comics over the years. And again, there was an iteration that was done as part of the Arrowverse, which was good, and I liked it. But the idea that it's getting that push into the mainstream in a Superman movie is amazing. So yeah, it's been great to sort of see all these little things pop up of, oh, that could be that, and that could be that. And, there is a scene where we see Metamorpho, who's again a longtime DC character in the. We just see a close up of his face. It's actually Anthony Carrigan from Barry that's playing Metamorpho. So I'm excited about both of those things. One, I love the character, and two, I think Anthony Carrigan is hilarious and awesome. So I think he's going to be great. I like. Obviously, not a lot of substance to this trailer. It's just kind of like these sort of flash quick cuts to different things, but it definitely whets the appetite for sure. The only part I found kind of hilarious about it is this beautiful gothic building that they've made for the Daily Planet, where it's got the planet on top, and you see people going in through the front entrance, and it looks so beautiful. I'm here to tell you, kids, I worked in journalism for 20 years. Nothing like that exists anymore except for the New York Times building. I guess that's the correlation. But I mean, I was just talking to a reporter friend of mine the other day, and he's like, we don't even have an office anymore. I've seen 5 of my coworkers in 3 years. I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, that's the most fantastic part of the movie. Everything else seems more realistic than that.
So you mentioned Metamorpho, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because according to the IMDb cast list, it's funny because Nicholas Hoult is listed as a top billing, and the new Superman is he's fifth. He's below Nathan Fillion, and listening, Alan Tudyk is in there. And there's a Supergirl character.
Nicholas Hoult is like a B plus actor. I don't know if he's an A-list actor, but he's a B plus actor. He's been nominated for Emmy Awards and BAFTAs and stuff like that. So
according to this, there's a Metamorpho, and there's also a Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, Mr. Terrific is the character we see. He's a black man. He's got this sort of T-shaped mask on his face.
Right, and then there's the engineer, which I think she's from the
Authority, which is another movie that is coming down the line. That is probably the thing I am most excited about in all of this DC reboot, because I am a huge fan of the Authority and have been since its inception. It's basically Justice League, but without rules. It's what if the Justice League did whatever it took to win and didn't care about, being glamorous or, being on the right side or restraint or any of that stuff. It's basically like we get results. As a comic concept, it's fantastic, and it was incredibly well executed by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch and a lot of other people that worked on that book. But I can't wait to see them let loose on that as a concept in the DC universe.
Mm-hmm. So July 11th is what they got listed on the trailer. So yeah, I'm sure I'm glad when you see the big thing land in the snow that it wasn't the capsule with the baby in it.
Yeah, but we did get a glimpse of the Fortress of Solitude. So again, some things are clearly sort of bedrocks and that. I'll be curious to see. So apparently the film is inspired by All-Star Superman, which was a series that came out in 2005. It is one of the best Superman stories I've ever read. It is really, really just a beautiful, sweet, funny look at Superman. And if they can follow that tone, I think they are really onto something, because the root of that book and the root of, I think, what James Gunn is trying to do with his sort of new DCU is love. It's rooted in love. It's not rooted in this is the character that's going to be the breakout, or this is going to be the tipping point of make us the most money. He's basically like, oh, I've got the, all the toys in the toy box. Well, I want to put this one with this one and this one and this one and this one. It's kind of what comics are, and it's kind of what all of us growing up reading that stuff loved was, oh, this week we get Superman, he's teaming up with this character, and this character, and they're going to fight this big monster and whatever. Like, that's what comics were made of, and if they can capture that and give us something really fun and cinematic, that's amazing. But yeah, they seem like they're casting a really wide net to start. I mean, Jaime, to your point, casting Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner is, it's just part of all of this where they're introducing a ton of touch-off points that are going to lead to other things. I just hope they don't do the sort of Age of Ultron, try and cram in too many future things at the expense of a current thing.
Well, it'll be a 2-hour movie, I'm sure, right? So
Easily.
Yep, cool. All right, let's talk about other stuff. I put a link up here for Jaime because we were talking about Karate Kid and the Karate Kid Legends. So I don't know if you watched that, but we were trying to figure out how Jackie Chan fits into this whole thing, and I think you got your answers.
Yeah, this is great because, this trailer was apparently shown at like a Comic-Con or something months ago.
Yep.
And there was all sorts of fakes out there on the interwebs, but this is a real one, which is great. You have the IGN one. I saw the same thing on the Sony YouTube channel. So it's looking pretty good. You've got Ben Wong as the new Karate Kid. So everybody else is kind of aged up. People on the interwebs were pointing out, they're in the same universe. So yes, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san are in the same universe as, I think it's Mr. Han, right? Is that Jackie Chan's character?
Yep.
And whatever Jaden Smith's name was, maybe he'll show up in a cameo or something. And I'm still holding out hope for Hilary Swank as well as showing up.
Well, that's been one of the hallmarks of that series, right? Of the
Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai shows. Everyone's like, when is Hilary Swank finally showing up, right?
Yeah, and admittedly, I've not seen the second half of the final season because they split it up kind of weird. It's in my queue to watch. It is available. So for all I know, maybe it does happen. But I do know from the first half of the final season, Daniel's wife, and this is something the internet was clowning on, Daniel's wife makes him promise that, hey, no more karate. He's like, all right, this tournament, which is the big season tournament, is the final thing. And so people say, hey, wait a minute, well, what's going on? How is he in this new movie? And wise people on the internet said, he said karate. He didn't say nothing about kung fu. So he just lawyered his wife.
Right. Nice. Cool. Well, you'll definitely be going to see this in the theater, or at least washing dishes. What's the story?
This might be a good one to go see in the theater. I think so.
Cool. All right. And the next story, I saw this a couple of days ago, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about because we really don't talk about Sesame Street a lot. But I'm of the age that it came out when I was 10. I assume you guys are familiar with Sesame Street, right?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize it had gone over to Max or Hulu, right? And I thought it was still on regular TV, or it was PBS in the States. And that's in fact where we first watched it, and it was in the snow-covered antenna-driven TVs, right? I remember the very first time I tried to watch Sesame Street, I couldn't make out anything, right? So I thought it was on Canadian television, but apparently it's been on Crave and on Max. And the story here, after I posted it, it actually ended up on our national news yesterday, or this morning, I think, actually, that they're dropping Sesame Street. So what do you guys think about that?
So does that mean it is not going to be on Max, or does that mean it isn't going to exist?
I think the original deal that the Imagineers was since 2015, 2016, something like that, was rather than being purely funded by the dollars by viewers like you, HBO Max, or HBO, I should say, was going to fund the new seasons, get them first, and then they would eventually make their way to PBS. So they always were on PBS, just kind of in a, for the poors is on PBS, and for the rich kids, that was brand spanking new on HBO. So that's coming to an end now, and there are people in the comments who say they would love to see on Apple TV Plus, and I think that's the answer right there. Who has the money? Who has the the ability to fund this sort of thing, I think it's a really good idea. Do the same kind of deal. Continues to be on PBS for people to watch normally, and then have it on the new stuff on Apple TV Plus until it ages out, like a season behind or something.
Yeah, because I vaguely remember Sesame Street was in trouble a few years ago. Is that correct? Am I thinking right? Or what?
I know PBS was having troubles, and Sesame Street is maybe one of the more expensive things, but also one of the big money makers. So it was an easier thing to make available for shopping around the licensing rights and etc.
Yeah, because we actually had for the last, 20 years, we've had a Canadian version of it, right? We have our own characters that are on there. Like I think it's a polar bear dude and probably a Canada Goose for all I know. But
yeah, I think what they do for the Canadian version is they kind of take certain segments that are in Spanish out and put them in with ones that are in French, and take certain ones that are a little more Canadian centric and a little less American centric. But I think we still get a lot of the root of the show.
If you ever wonder why Jonathan and I know how to speak a little Spanish, it's probably because we watched Sesame Street when we were kids, right?
And Dora when my kids were kids.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yep. Anyway.
Hola, soy Dora.
We'll have to see where we go with this. Anyway, just interesting story. Mm-hmm. These sci-fi characters that appear on the street of Sesame. All right. I think the last story here from the headlines is from Jaime. So
this will be a little confusing, so bear with me. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 with Keanu Reeves as Shadow the Hedgehog, the new addition to the growing cast, is coming out this December. And in fact, my family has independently said that they would like to go see this in theaters. I'm like, oh, cool, great. I would probably see this in theaters as a family thing during the holidays. But they've already announced at Paramount Pictures that Sonic the Hedgehog 4 is coming into theaters in 2027. So they're very confident of this happening as a real solid thing. There is an unholy number of Sonic the Hedgehog characters. This does not have to end before it hits the 20s, if I'm being quite honest. They do one new character per movie.
It's funny that has been such a brand that they feel comfortable building around. There was this kind of, felt like when they were talking about doing the Mario movie, they were talking about doing the Sonic movie, it felt like it was like, well, this is kind of an arms race again, just like the good old days of like, who's going to win at the box office? And I think the answer is clear now. Like, they've made one Mario movie and it got pretty well received, but like, I haven't heard another peep out of any of it, and now we're looking at Sonic 1, 2, 3, 4 plus a spin-off TV show plus. It's crazy how quickly that sort of snowballed into a pretty big franchise for them.
Yeah, it's interesting that if people remember, because it's been a while, when they first released the trailer for the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie, the internet absolutely blew up with Ugly Sonic.
Oh, yeah.
Ugly Sonic got shamed into delaying the movie release, missing, I think, a holiday season, if I'm not mistaken, and spending millions of dollars to fix the CGI model, make it on model with the way he looks in the other media. And that turned into what seemed to be a throwaway joke, but is actually a very important joke in the Chippendale Rescue Rangers live-action movie. To go from that to this sort of heights is like, this is a podcast, it's an audio medium, so bear with me. I'm going to describe the Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny's like on an airplane. There's a gremlin, like the old-timey World War II gremlin, ripping parts out of the airplane, and it is plummeting like straight down to the earth. And then he just like pulls the brakes at the last second and it stops midair like if it could hover. Like, that's exactly what they did there. They were plummeting, just burning cash, and they turned into a cash cow instead. Like, that should be a book somewhere of like, how the heck did they turn this around? What is the story here? How can you save moribund franchises?
But it's also an example, and it's a good parallel conversation to what we just talked about with Superman. It was one of the strongest reactions we've seen from the zeitgeist of people who are like, not my Sonic, and really got upset about that first initial trailer and said, like, you had me nostalgically at Sonic, but what the hell is this thing? I don't want to see that. They went back, they made the character look like people kind of expected it to look, and the response was huge, and it's turned into this huge thing. I think there's a really good lesson there. Hopefully some studios have picked up, maybe not every single one, but of give the people what they want. Like, don't feel like you need to mess around with this stuff. Like, sometimes good enough is good enough, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's working. Sonic is a beloved character. He looks a certain way. Calm down, just make it look like that.
Yeah, it was a strange choice. In fact, I still haven't watched it because I was so turned off by the original trailer. That was such a really bad rendering, right? So,
yep.
Does that trailer still exist, I wonder?
I mean, there's certainly no shortage of stills of the original trailer, because people do the side-by-side all the time and be like, this is what we could have had.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show for sure, right? So,
yep.
Or was it more than just code? I can't remember.
Yeah. May have crossed over. It's a good question.
Must have been this one. Cool. All right, well, that brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about something Star Trek related. You can start crying now, Jonathan. This time we were talking about the Star Trek Lower Decks finale, series finale.
No.
The last of the last, or as they called it, the new Next Generation. So,
right.
And it was like fun-packed, no holds barred Star Trek, right?
Yeah, it was very Trekky.
It was very Trekky, yes, it was. What do you got for your pitches?
I had a couple of options, but I went with all good things must come to an end, but the mission just keeps on going and going and going. I also liked Space, the Final Frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Ceritos. Her ongoing mission to revisit strange worlds, to seek out familiar life and known civilizations, and to badly go where other crews have been before.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I kind of doubled up on a quote as well as the elevator pitch, which was, all hands brace for weird.
Yeah. That is an absolute perfect summation.
Yeah. It's funny. I discovered on the Paramount app that they actually have a pretty good pitch for each episode, which is not your typical straightforward pitch, but surprisingly, they just say season finale where lots of weird wild stuff happens. It says here, so wild stuff, weird wild stuff. Yep,
and we knew we were in for it from last week. They had, obviously they kind of got the last of their guest stars out of the way last week, and they set us up for, hey, this cataclysmic event is headed towards our prime Star Trek universe, and the Ceritos was going to have to deal with it. And so we knew we were going to get some weirdness. It wasn't, all things being equal, quite as weird as I was kind of expecting, given how many different weird permutations of Trek we'd seen this season. It maybe wasn't as weird as I thought they could have pushed it, but then I was kind of grateful for that, because I wanted to spend these last 30 minutes with our core 4, core 5 characters and have it really be about them, and I got what I wanted out of that.
Well, and they brought out every regular. I mean, we had there was one scene where the 5 characters are sort of glowing, like the Mariner's talking. She's at the center of the 5 of them, and they're sort of standing in almost a hero pose. But they did bring out all the, Bilbs was there, and Stevens was there, and everybody that had been on the show, and the 2 Klingons and.
Yep.
Whatever. Yeah, the Dolphins for sure. And I called out Badgie as an early Easter egg, because you see him on one of the upper decks walking along, but then he turns out in the finale, the wrap-up scenes, he shows up as, quite in there quite well, right? So not so much of an Easter egg anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my pitch. Anyway. So pew pew pew, there was tons of pew pew pew. I mean, the big battle with the Klingons was probably the main part, right?
Yeah, I went the other way. The pew 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 when Ceritos, when they're just sort of hellbent for getting close to the rift, and we get the changing Ceritos as they're being attacked. That was my sort of favorite pew pew pew, because they kept changing the Ceritos. So we got, the Galaxy class Ceritos. We got the What's the new one? What's the new Enterprise? It's the Sovereign class.
So
you got the Sovereign class.
Sovereign, Oberth, Galaxy, Miranda class.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. It was just fun in that moment where, like, it's both, you feel the tension of, like, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to change the status quo? Like, is something sort of weird going to happen? But you're also getting this kind of fun sort of Rolodex of Trek mixed in, which is what this show does, right? Like, the show has always been a love letter to all these different iterations of Trek, and this kind of continues that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What was your pew-pew, Jaime?
Yeah, I had mine split across the couple of Klingon battles. There's one in normal space, the Rift battle. The Rift realities had some pew-pew-pew stuff going on that was different.
I noticed we got that retro Klingon photon torpedo, too. The red one that spins up and comes towards them, right?
Yeah, well, I really liked, was it Tana that says, their ships don't really change that much.
Yeah.
Like, it may have changed 25 times. We'd never know. It always looks like a bird hanging in space. Yeah, and we saw at the beginning, sort of skipping ahead to an Easter egg, but, like, when the reality wave hits the ship, we see them transform into those weird early disco season Klingons too, right?
Yeah, it's funny.
So we kind of get a little bit of a,
an Easter eggy thing, yeah.
Easter eggy thing happening there, yeah,
for sure. Well, I mean, do you want to jump to Easter eggs?
Yeah, bring it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had tachyons here, which we don't always get, but we get them a lot in other Treks. And at one point, they turned into the Terran Empire ship, right?
Yeah,
which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, I love the reaction from Shax, who's like, "Look at the weaponry."
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and Luigi Mangione took the helm when Boimler got up, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, that character, whoever he is, has got a head wound, and
oh yeah, he falls through a portal, right? He falls back into the sickbay in a portal.
I guess, I don't know, but the dude looked exactly like Luigi Mangione, who's the guy on the news these days, right?
Mm.
You didn't notice that?
No, I again, sorry,
that's that
just kind of look like a generic guy, but you're right. Yeah, I guess it's true.
Yeah, the big black eyebrows and the curly black hair, right?
We'll call that a coincidence. Wink, wink.
Yeah. Well, there's no way they would have known that, right? But anyway,
no. Any other Easter eggs, Jaime?
A few that are kind of different types. Definitely a trope that another ship, in this case the Enterprise, was on its way, but not enough time, so our hero ship of this show has to solve the problem. Shax and detonating the warp core is a through line thing for him. One of the Klingon ships turns into a sailing barge, which I think is the kind that takes the dead to Sto-vo-Kor, which B'Elanna had with her mom on Voyager. The episodes.
Yep. Great call.
And I don't know if they've confirmed this, but I'm going to call it real. The Captain Freeman was originally mentioned in Star Trek Picard, so that is presumably this Captain. Not Captain Freeman, Captain Ransom. Captain Ransom is what I meant to type there, but
really?
Captain Ransom was mentioned in Star Trek Picard.
Because this actually is set before Picard,
right?
Chronologically, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that. I don't know if it counts as an Easter egg, but when Boimler and Mariner do the high five, their hands are in the Vulcan salute.
Oh, yeah, nice. Spock 5.
Oh, is it Spock 5, she says?
I didn't come up with that. I've known it for years. I don't know where I got it from, the interwebs, I suppose.
I think it might be Big Bang.
Oh, there we go.
Spock 5, yeah. They also, when they are talking about the science of the rift, they call it the Schrödinger field, the Schrödinger probability field. I thought that was very funny. This conversation at the beginning when they're sitting in the bar and they start talking about core bopples made me laugh hysterically. I don't think that's ever come up, but it was I love again that they're just taking the piss out of Star Trek gobbledygook speak, where they're like, everybody knows the artificial gravity runs on core bopples. Like, come on. Like, you guys are just having too much fun now. Yeah, no, it was again, I think what I wanted from this finale was to focus on our main cast, kind of have a little bit of a greatest hits, and be funny and be what it always has been, which is, again, a love letter to Star Trek filled with goofiness and, hopefully a satisfying ending. And I don't think there could have been a more satisfying ending than then the mission continues, that these people aren't going their separate ways, because they kept trying to sort of separate them over the course of the seasons. One person would go off on a different thing and they did different stuff, but I think it just gives me great comfort to think that, for us as viewers, the Ceritos is still out there and it's still doing its mission, but now they're engaging the core.
Yeah, having that as the key phrase is kind of
engage the core.
It's definitely on brand, and it makes sense. It still makes sense. It's still logical.
Yeah. Quotes. Jaime, what'd you have for your quotes?
Besides the aforementioned all hands brace for weird and engage the core, one that stuck out to me is sort of it seems like a weird dig, but the Ceritos crew kind of rolls with it when it's Starfleet Command saying, of course, we would never choose a California-class ship for a mission like this. Right? And that's why they're like sending the Enterprise instead. I'm like, thought it was kind of a dig, but then they were like, oh yeah, thankfully we don't have to take care of this. Somebody else is going to do this nonsense. And I thought that was kind of a neat way to tie together, what this show is about. It's about the folks on the lower decks. It's about the less glamorous, second contact crews. The Ceritos is not a powerhouse by any means. So that's why it stuck out to me.
Yeah. I liked when we get the two Klingon brothers, Malor and Mach. And Malor takes command of the shuttle and says, sorry, brother, but today is not a good day to die.
Yeah.
Again, just playing with the trope, because how many times did we hear a Klingon say that over all the different, quote-unquote serious Star Trek series? Yeah. I also liked... there has to be some kind of sneaky, underhanded Kirk-style trick we can use to mess her up, just like they did in the old days from Dr. T'Ana. I like that, that's the legacy of Kirk, is what can we do that is, completely out in left field to mess people up? But I think the summation of the series was in Mariner, who said, whoever decided to put a bar on a starship deserves a medal.
Yeah, that was true. Yeah, it was Mariner, yeah.
Yeah, that, again... is stuff that people don't say out loud in the other shows, but that they're all thinking, thank God there's a bar here.
Right, yeah.
Okay, big question. And I think this is a big question. This might be the biggest question I've asked, so hold on to your socks. Was this the best beginning to end Star Trek series ever made?
This is a tricky one because... I use the same sort of debate in my head when it comes to people saying, the best Star Wars movie. And quite frequently, people say The Empire Strikes Back. And I think that's perfectly valid. However, I point out that The Empire Strikes Back really falls apart as a standalone movie. It needs... Even if you get away with not needing an intro, like A New Hope, you at least need Return of the Jedi to have it not end on a weird cliffhanger for this one installment movie. Lower Decks, I think, is another interesting debate of is this The Empire Strikes Back of Star Trek, where for the fans, it might legitimately be the best Star Trek. Or standalone, it might be really hard for this to stand alone because it does reference a lot of stuff. It gets so much better and funnier because you do have to know stuff that comes before and after this. Is that a really lame way of getting out of saying that's definitively the best? And saying I could see it being the best. Is it the best? Good question.
Well, I kind of feel the same way. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? The chicken doesn't exist without the egg, right?
Fair enough, but
to me, let me make my point.
Okay.
To me, Star Trek doesn't exist without the original series, right? This in the same way that all of the other Star Wars movies don't exist without A New Hope, right? So I don't think you can take the cornerstone out of the question. But if you ask me to compare The Next Generation to Deep Space Nine to Voyager to Picard to I forgot what the other ones are, but or
Disco,
Lower Decks,
Strange New Worlds, animated series.
Yeah, so Strange New Worlds is up there, but if you had me, even animated series. But if I was comparing this as a granted that, the chicken and the egg, you can't have chicken without an egg, right? You can't have any Star Trek without the original series. And don't forget, I lived through the gap that existed before when Star Trek ended and the Next Generation came out. And in the same way that I existed, and you did as well, waiting for Phantom Menace to come out, right? But I would say of those shows, like of the, starting from the Next Generation and moving forward to all the other Star Treks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, yeah, I'm pretty much, I think if it's not number one, it's close to number two for sure, right? I do enjoy what they're doing with Strange New Worlds, right? But then again, it's also time. I mean, type of television we had in the 90s was different. Type of television we had in the 2000s was different, right? So that's that's when the three other mainstays, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and the Next Generation existed, right? So yeah, I think the animated series, since you mentioned it, was a nice to have kind of supplement to, we didn't know we were waiting for the Next Generation to come out, but it was a good, better than nothing, right? And it did play with the original series in a sense, right? In that it was the same characters, the same voices, and whatever. But yeah, I would put Lower Decks up there in terms of where if I had a choice to sit down and watch something again, I would watch Lower Decks.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm viewing it is quality of content from seasons 1 through 5. Not necessarily is it the best Star Trek series ever, but is it the most consistently high quality? Because you can, I agree, you have to go back and look at the original series as such a key point, and even Next Generation, they're just these great jumping off points. They create so much important canon that they can jump off from there. But there are huge chunks of both the original series and TNG that are quite forgettable and in cases quite awful. Like the quality, the production value, the performances, the concepts aren't great. There weren't a lot of misses in this series. Like the quality level from season 1 through 5 was very high. You could pretty much throw on any episode and laugh and be impressed with their love of Star Trek and also their enjoyment in taking it down a peg. And I think that's something special. I think that's something to be really recognized. Mike McMahon and all the writers that worked on this, they put a lot into it, and the quality stayed really high for 5 seasons. There are very few shows where the quality of something is sustained over 5 years. That's an unfortunate rarity in modern television.
Yeah. I'm glad that they got to finish the series. I'm glad they didn't get canceled or have the plug pulled out in the middle somewhere, right? But then again, all of the series, as far as I know, the Next Generation was planned to be that long, right? And to have an ending, right?
Well, they signed them all to contracts. That was basically it, right? I think they signed them to 5-year contracts with 2-year options. When they did all of those, when it was TNG and Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
But we forgot Enterprise.
Well, Enterprise was the same thing. I think that actually legitimately got canceled because I think they had 5-year contracts and they decided to end it early. But I think in this case, I think it's different. You can look at it as a cancellation. You can look at it as an ending. Obviously, Disco only lasted 5 seasons. This lasted 5 seasons. Picard was only 3 seasons. Who knows what we'll get from Strange New Worlds? And obviously, they're ramping up Starfleet Academy now. We know we're going to get at least a couple seasons of that. I think the circumstances are just a little bit different as far as, the modern era. Even just to get a creative team to work on something for a long period of time. Animation's a little less onerous, although I say that without having been involved. I know people who work on these kinds of things who say it's not any less work. It's just a different medium. But I can't... it's impressive that, it got 5 years. It's disappointing because it is animation. You feel like, well, they could just keep doing it forever. But, would I... If they did a 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 12th, Family Guy / South Park / Simpsons of just keep going forever, would we be like, I stopped caring about that show after 5 seasons? So, but I think this was a strong ending. I don't think it was a perfect ending, but I think it was a very good ending. And I really hope that the love for this, especially as it's now out there on, on Paramount in its entirety, people can watch it. Hopefully word of mouth gives its life for years to come. And I hope that, maybe we'll see down the road, we'll see a one-off special or like a made for Paramount Plus movie starring them, or, that's the best part of an animated series. It's a heck of a lot easier to get back up off the ground, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I do know, I spoke to another Trekker today who hasn't watched Lower Decks yet, right? So I think there's still an audience of people who, we talked to Josh a couple of weeks ago. I'm on a regular chat with him and a couple of other people, and Lower Decks does come up often, right? But there are a lot of people who haven't dipped their toe in yet, and they're in for a surprise when they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great show.
All right, well, farewell to ye, Lower Decks.
Now a word from our sponsor.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere, for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Now back to the show.
Speaking of stars, let's move on to the next one.
Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. In this case, it's Skeleton Crew. I have an elevator pitch for this one.
Okay.
Boy meets girl, boy loses girl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I went with a Friends, the sitcom TV show style of naming. I went with the one with the child soldiers.
Yeah.
Child scouts, never soldiers. Yeah.
I went with Make Love, Not Star Wars. I also like the idea of welcome to the official Star Wars drinking game. Every time SM33 says, "Can't say I remember no Attin," you have to take a shot.
Well,
by the way, you'll be hammered by the end of this episode.
It's funny because, I didn't look at the title of the show, but I originally had put down "I can't say I remember no Attin" as my quote that I caught, right? Because he said it a couple of times, and then he said it he must have said it about 5 times, 10 times in the show, right? And it turns out that's the name of the episode. "Can't say I remember no Attin," which you can take it a couple of different ways, because he said that in when they've asked him about Attin in previous episodes, and it turns out that it's not that he can't remember no Attin. He can't say that he remembers Attin, which we find out as the story progresses. So, do you think he's done for the show? Do you think that character's, now that he's turned on Fern, that they're done with him?
I hope not. I mean, he's kind of a fun and funny character, and obviously he's the muscle. So I don't know. I mean, kids being kids, I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing the kids say is, "No, but we have to fix him because we love him." You kind of get the vibe that well, no man left behind. I think it's possible that we might see more. They load him back in and they figure out a way to reprogram him, or the rat reprograms him or something. Or
K9 or whatever her name is, KB.
Yeah, KB. Yeah, so somebody might, I think it would be a little surprising if this was the end of that, just because in a kids focused show, in a sort of that kind of vein, I have a tough time. In the same way that they insisted that Jod goes back and gets him from the pirate colony, right? So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him again.
But they did need him. Right, that. It's a good thing they did go back and get him, because he kind of knows where the MacGuffin is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What'd you guys have for your pew pew pew?
Not a ton. I had the gun training that they were doing.
Yeah.
I liked. It was a short scene, but I liked the Neil standing up against 33. Was fun. Where he's like, because he's the one the whole time is like, I don't want to shoot anything and I don't want to do that. And then he's the one who stands up at the end and is like, no. And then, SM-33 comes at him and then he's just like, ah. And then they're like, good job, Neil. And he faints.
Yeah, it's interesting. How did he get out of, was he just that good at shooting that he got out of the training or something? Or was the one girl says to him,
because he goes up and sees the big gun, right? He sees the big turret they have up on the roof. Yeah, I mean, he gets out of it because he's hanging out with the princess of the clan, right?
Yeah. Second in line.
Yeah. Neil.
And just Neil is, it's interesting. Neil's, I noticed in the credits that Robert Timothy Smith plays Neil as a voice actor. Mm-hmm. It's actually a female actor who does the body work.
Yeah, there's actually it's a whole team. They're actually, I think on Star Wars social channels this week they sort of highlighted that it's actually a team because the mask is robotic puppeteering,
right?
Yeah, and then there's also a person playing, like a child playing the character, and then there's a voice. So yeah, it kind of takes a team to make that come to reality. But I mean, it's kind of cheating, but it's kind of perfect cheating. The fact that his trunk covers his mouth, so they don't have to really show him talking too much, is kind of brilliant costume design.
Well, the trunk / nose, it's quite animate. I mean,
it does, but I mean, really, in the scenes where he's talking, they're so often focusing on his eyes and not his mouth.
Right.
So you don't really have to. You don't have to worry about that sort of part of it either.
Yeah, I forgot. I missed the quote, but he did say something about the fog was messing with his trunk at one point.
Oh yeah, in the beginning. Yeah.
It's an interesting choice to put them out in front of the first target to be shot at, right? When they're you can join us, but you have to lead the way, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to circle back to that in a minute. The whole concept of this episode we'll come back to, but. I only had one thing really for the Easter eggs. I mean, there was a few sort of familiar tropes, but the only thing that was really kind of an Easter eggy kind of thing was the Eopes, right? Eopes are, in theory, they're indigenous to Tatooine. So I don't know what that's supposed to tell us, but if you look at
the horse thingies,
if you look at Wikipedia, they are indigenous to them. Now, maybe this is a subspecies or whatever, but I wonder if that means that there's been sort of cross pollination across these places, or what we're supposed to take away from that.
Well, they seem to be a resource, right? Like they have them around as a resource for food or milk or whatever.
Yeah, and they are on Tatooine, and they've been exported to other planets. I just think it's interesting.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and that would be why you would take your favorite resource with you, because like eggs and chickens, they kind of make breakfast, like. In some way, shape, or form, right? So, in the same way that sheep and cows have been spread out throughout the world, right? In the same way, as people moved around.
Yeah. Anything else catch your eyes as far as Easter eggs?
No, I doubled up on that one. I said the EOPs were the animals that farted in Jar Jar's face.
Yep, 100%.
That was my connection to them.
Ooh, stinky inky. A couple quotes I liked. I liked when Fern tells SM-33 to babysit Jod. And so he says, initiating babysitting sequence. Come on, baby. Onto the ship, baby. Don't make me count. I love that in a show with so many children, it's Jod that's getting treated like a kid. That was very funny. And Jod at one point when he's sort of outmatched and, he just looks at the camera and says, you know what, just shoot me. That was, again, sort of a little bit of a breaking of the fourth wall kind of moment where he's just like, yeah, I give up.
Yeah, I doubled up on the babysitting when I didn't have any other juicy quotes.
Yeah, for a very talky episode, it wasn't exactly crackling with dialogue to pull from.
Yeah, I viewed it as more of a bit of a glue one, right? So we learn more about what's going on with Attin and the other planets.
Yeah, the jewels of the Old Republic.
Yeah, and the fact that the coordinates were known and damaged intentionally for Attin, and the SM-33 being ordered to not allow anybody to get there, which led to my question, which is the ship that they were on, that was crashed and abandoned, or was it a hideout? Like, I have all sorts of questions of like, what's the deal with that ship?
Yeah,
it came to the forefront again in my head, rather than just
because it actually was on
them
Attin initially, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like I said on the very first episode, why didn't they just ask the nav a computer to take them back where they came from? Because clearly the ship had been to the real Attin initially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it could be blocked as well, just like SM33.
Yeah. Jaime, you've walked us straight down the path of as far as a segue that was perfect. My big question was, if they know and recognize that that tower is the supervisor's tower and that tower exists on all the planets, if they all have the same communities and they all have the same tower, why don't they just go to one of the other planets that is identified there and then get the coordinates to Attin from there? If everything's duplicated...
Yeah, it could be.
Like,
is they only have 6-8 episodes?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that to me, I was like, well, they're like, oh no, this one's destroyed. I'm like, in the tower, that's an exact duplicate, and there's clearly 8 other models of this exact same tower in other places that you can find. Why wouldn't you just go there? Like, that seemed like a pretty quick, easy step of logic, but apparently they weren't going there because they're children.
True, but that is totally a game strategy, right? Like, if you were playing like a solve it game, you would recognize the fact that this particular island has the same artifact, and maybe on one of the other islands the clue is there, right?
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it too much, but I've certainly seen on Reddit some of the conversations. So this story is following the beats of Robert Louis Stevenson Treasure Island, right? And then, but what people are really glomming onto is, oh, actually, I watched Disney's Treasure Planet, and this is kind of like Disney's Treasure Planet. But yeah, it's kind of following those beats, which again, in a pirate story and an adventure story are familiar ones. But yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of parallels to the original sort of
but sure, there's the peg-leg pirate, which is
peg-leg pirate, and again, there's other ones we talked about. SM33 is Smee, and Smee is Peter Pan. They're doing a lot of pirate stuff, clearly, sort of tied to that, but. Yeah, I wonder if, we're spinning our wheels when you could just, read the synopsis for Treasure Island and figure out what they're going to do next. I don't know. Be interesting to see how close to that original arc they're going to go.
Yeah, well, except that there's only one kid in Treasure Island, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But you're right. Treasure Planet may be another place to go and glean ideas from.
Yeah. So last week we sort of, I poured a thimble full of water on the excitement for this one, and I still see a lot of people online who are very, very much enjoying this series, and I can't say I'm not enjoying it. This episode was by far for me the weakest. I didn't really enjoy it. I thought the whole, like, we're in clans, we steal each other's stuff, we shoot each other, but we don't kill each other. There are children soldiers. Like, it was a very muddled metaphor. I'm like, what? Like, if it was all children, I'm like, okay, well, then we're doing the Lost Boys, Peter Pan-y kind of stuff, but it wasn't. I really can't say I understand what they were trying to do here, other than to show that, like, theirs is this idyllic world, but not all of these situations turned out to be idyllic. I don't know. It didn't resonate with me tremendously well. And I thought that the French accents that they were all doing were maybe some of the French accent work, the worst French accent work I've ever heard in my entire life. Yeah. Like, it was like Peter Sellers, Inspector Clouseau stuff. Like, it was bad. It was genuinely quite awful.
I did note that in my notes that if you've seen the South Park episodes, or maybe it's the movie with the French resistance.
It's the movie.
The resistance must go on.
That's right. The resistance. Yeah. Oh, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I didn't think that any of the guest performers, none of them were good, either in making me care about them or like. Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole thing was to sort of show what kind of person Neil is, that he was kind. You know, at one point he gives his food away. Another point he's talking about, you know, how, you know, awful it all is. But I don't know. This one really, really didn't land with me. I was like, oof. Like, by the end of it, when it ended, I was just like, oof, I'm glad that's over.
Well, so there's one thing, though. The leader guy, Matthew Kazanovitz, plays the leader guy, was born in Paris, France.
Again, great. He still sounded like the worst caricature of a French person ever. And the little girl that played his daughter was awful. Yeah, I don't know. Your mileage may vary. Maybe if you're bought into this. Yeah, I don't know.
She's from Kansas City, Missouri, so yeah, that one makes sense. But
the pluck of it all just wasn't enough to carry me over on this one. I was like, this just feels like you're trying to say something. It didn't work for me. I kind of want to just move on and see what's next. But it kind of took a bit of the wind out of the sails. If you continue the pirate metaphor, it just didn't really didn't carry the momentum forward from a couple of fun episodes to sort of get things going. This really felt like it slowed things down to a not happy pace that I just didn't enjoy as much.
Yeah, I mean, it was just go find the tower and figure out of the 5 at whatever planets, you know, the 5th one has been obscured, right? So
yeah.
Conveniently,
yeah. Yep. Well, here's hoping next week they bring it back up a little bit, bring the pace back up, and have a little more fun, because this was not so much for me.
Cool. Should we move on to Solo?
Sure.
Solo and Solo.
Solo and Solo.
This episode was called Descent, surprisingly, which I thought was about her going back down to get another helmet, but no, it was about escaping the tower or escaping from the accusation of murder from last week, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a little bit of both, because we get Juliet and Solo as she starts to kind of figure out that maybe Solo isn't everything that he says he is, or is, you know, there's kind of a little bit of inconsistency in his stories there, especially now that she's kind of found some other evidence. And also, you know, when she kind of confronts him with that, he's not in a great mental health space. Not that you'd expect him to be, but still. And then, yeah, simultaneously we get the story in Silo 18 of just how bad things are getting as Bernard's machinations start to leave Mechanical in a pretty bad place.
Mm-hmm. He promotes the common character to the judge, right?
Yeah, which is not what he wants, and then kind of blocks him out of judicial, kind of like he did with Meadows, right? Kind of on the outside looking in. And then we get these kind of weird moves by his wife, who is, you know, trying to sort of, as Camille is trying to sort of help him with his own machinations that are going to help him, including like letting everybody go inexplicably, which is weird. But yeah,
apparently that will come back because they know that was her that did it, right? So
yeah, and we also get Billings down deep in Mechanical trying to sort of piece together what's going on with, you know, and trying to track down the would-be assassin, the would-be, you know, person who they're trying to find, right? Yeah, again, this one also felt like a bit of a glue episode. There was a lot of sort of stuff that needed to happen, but then in the end, not a lot really happened.
Yeah, the biggest part was putting back together the files from the broken hard drive as the sort of key moving forward.
Yep.
Which is kind of impossible, you know?
Yeah. And this is the midway point too, so we're halfway through the season, so, you know, again, at this point we're just kind of juggling all these different sort of plot lines and storylines, and, you know, trying to figure it all out. I will say this one, when Juliet figures out, like, oh no, you know, things are going to go really off the rails back at my old silo, I have to build a suit, I have to go back. There was kind of an urgency around that, and then it kind of feels like it's really slowed that down. Like she doesn't seem as urgent as maybe she should, or is portrayed, you know, in earlier episodes where she's like, oh no, I have to get back ASAP, and now she's kind of like, well, but then obviously she's she's not well here either, right? Like
when she's struggling to put the helmet together, right? So
yeah. Again, it'll be interesting to see. I suspect starting next week, we'll start to see the pace start to ramp up a little bit, because there is a lot of stuff that is kind of, the tension's building. It's building in mechanical, it's building in judicial, it's building with Sims, it's building, as she's trying to figure out how she's going to get back. It's building with what's going on inside of Solo's head. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of simmering, waiting to boil over. And obviously with Billings now knowing that Bernard is a liar, and so. Yeah, it's a lot of threads that need to come together to wrap this up in 5 more weeks. And speaking of things that need to wrap up soon.
Yeah, Dune Prophecy.
Oh, you know what? I didn't get the news here in time, but there is no soon, gentlemen. There is a season 2 coming. I saw that.
Oh, did they officially announce it?
Yeah, where did I see it? I see it on The Verge.
Good God, help us all.
Oh man, where was it?
Oh, sure enough, it's on Hollywood Reporter as of late this afternoon. You're right.
It's
on The Verge too. Yep.
It was the actual breaking news.
This just in.
Renewed for a second season.
Well, I guess good, because I just did not see how they were going to land all this. They had done too much and tried to cram too much in what was going to be 6 episodes. I just did not see how it was going to land. Like, this was a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
right.
What, I guess for this show, I mean, as far as this particular episode, is it in any way more? Is it grabbing you?
I mean,
anymore?
the only question I have is now we're trying to figure out the origin of the dude who can't even think of his name now. The Travis Fimmel character.
Is it Desmond Hart?
Yeah, Desmond Hart. Thank you. Yeah, they're trying to figure out. And is it Tula's kid from? Yes. Did she get pregnant when she went and hung out with those guys? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So we don't need to watch the rest of the episodes. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was what we're supposed to get when she pops the.
Oh yes, you mean yes as in this for sure, or yes as I'm right in that thread?
Oh no, I think you were right, because when she gets the note from Valia and she puts the thing into the machine to try and test it, it says Atreides, Harkonnen, and then we see Tula start crying, and she realizes, oh, this is my kid.
That I gave up for adoption.
That I gave up years ago, whatever. And then we cut to Desmond, who says, "My mom gave me up, and and was a sister." So, I mean, unless they're throwing us some weird red herring, I don't think that would make any sense. But that seems to be where they're going with it. Is that Tula?
So the fact that he's got this brain tricky thing, he probably got that through inheritance because his aunt has the same thing, right, or similar thing.
Exactly. So I still think that there might be something more there, because he's got that eye thing. He's got this weird thing with the robots. We saw the video of him basically being like face down by Shai-Hulud. I'm not unconvinced that he doesn't have like some kind of, robot brain, something going on in there or something. But oh,
really? Oh, okay.
I don't know. It seems weird to me.
Conspiracy.
Well, yeah, like if you were going to try and find a way to do this, I mean, it's either that or you have to take it at face value, which is that he had like somehow survived this conflict with the largest sandworm on the planet and had a religious epiphany after that and decided to go back to the throne world and start some stuff. So I don't know. The head scratcher of the week. And maybe I'll have to go back and rewatch this whole thing once it lands, although I really don't want to. Sister Francesca shows up, and we find out that Constantine is her son. Did we know that earlier? Did you guys clock that at all?
It caught me by surprise in this one.
So, yeah, like I did not know that we were supposed to think that there was some division, that like Haviko, the emperor, had him with her, but then his current wife, the Empress, is the mother of his daughter, so that his kids are half siblings. To have that thrown in here in episode 5 of 6, and then to have like this woman show up and sort of throw this split between the Emperor and the Empress, like all of it just felt like it came completely out of left field. And I was like, God, not more characters, not more subplots. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, some people must think it's pretty because why would it get renewed for a second season?
I mean,
and will we ever talk about it again on this show?
I hope that there is some long game in this that makes a lot more sense. There are moments in this show where I'm like, oh, interesting concept, where are we going with this? And then often it slams face first into a brick wall, or just like nothing comes of things. So I mean, I have seen a couple people, read a few things on Reddit as well, just trying to sort of see what people are thinking about all this. And a lot of people are like, well, there's lots of interesting ideas here. It just doesn't seem like they're coalescing. And everyone was of the same mentality of like, how the heck do you land this by a 6th episode? So maybe that was the case, was they were just like, this was never meant to be 6 episodes. It was always meant to be 12 or whatever, 18 episodes or whatever. And maybe we were just expecting too much of it to actually land the plane after 6 episodes, and we're just going to end on some crazy cliffhanger that's going to, come back 3 years from now when they finally do a second part of this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the synopsis on IMDb is that it's 2 Harkonnen sisters, combating forces and establishing the Bene Gesserit, right? The Bene Gesserit is quite a different, it's almost like the Jedi. What do you call it? Temple? What do you call it?
Yeah, the Jedi Order. Yeah,
the Jedi Order. Thank you. It's kind of like that in Frank Herbert's world, right? So, how do we get there from here? Which is what the whole point of this story / show is about, right?
Yeah, but again, 10,000 years.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of development can happen in 10,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Jaime, are you in for season 2?
I'm not sure. The fact that it's going to get a season 2, because I actually think it's probably for the best, because there was going to be extreme hold my beer moments in this final episode if they didn't have a second season. It really makes me think that they should have gone the House of the Dragon. Let's just tell it in order with a time jump from season to season,
right?
Or mid-season or something, like wherever it makes sense. Like it doesn't make sense to me how they flick back and forth between the past and the present. It feels like the baby Desmond reveal would fit better if it was like, oh yeah, she in season 1 she gave up that kid. Holy smokes! In season 2 that kid is hers. Like it would feel crazier rather than like, oh, you just hid it from us for like no reason. Like, I don't even remember them talking about her giving up a child.
Maybe her having been pregnant at any point either, right?
Like, it's certainly plausible that she could have gotten pregnant, given, what she had to do to take out House Atreides, or part of House Atreides. But it feels like a weird writing trick that doesn't really do much, whereas you could hit the same plot point and get a better effect, I think, if you do it in chronological order.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the Dune movie does the same thing. It basically travels along from beginning to end. It doesn't flash back and tell any past story. It just picks up at the beginning with the Duke being killed and the son having to run away and resurface as the leader, right? As the one, with the lightsaber and stuff, stopping bullets.
Yeah, well, it's weird too, because there are parallels. Obviously, George Lucas, God bless him, stole a lot of stuff from James Herbert.
Did he?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Frank Herbert. Yeah.
Frank Herbert. Yes. Yeah. Like, I mean, the whole the desert planet, the boy who has this destiny. The whole. But
isn't that the hero's journey though? Like, isn't that
it is
Joseph
the hero's
Campbell
journey? But I think even just some of the elements he borrowed from Dune as well. I mean, watch Hidden Fortress and Dune, and you're halfway to the recipe for creating Star Wars.
Well, that and American Graffiti, right?
Yeah. So I think it's don't
forget the race in the middle of the movie.
It's interesting that we've gone so far back, obviously, between countless TV shows, books, comic books, cartoons, everything else, and the Star Wars. ancient history. This is sort of the ancient history of that world. It's not scintillating. It's not. I don't know. Maybe it's just. I think maybe there's a bit more romanticism to sort of the Knights of the Old Republic concept versus the spice smuggle. Like, who is the protagonist of this show? Who are we rooting for? Who do you care about? Anyone? Can you name more than 5 characters? And they've introduced, for the record, 300 characters in this show so far in 5 episodes.
Yeah. If you ask me, I would go with the 2 sisters, although I don't really like the Emily Watson as an adult. And then because there's the odd back and forth with the 2 kids of the Emperor's kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the interplay with the Emperor and his wife and their dominance and her sort of conniving on the side. And then there's this whole rebellion thing in the middle of it. And then putting I've forgotten his name again, Jaime, as the leader of the. Oh, and then the swordsman is the Atreides
sword master,
dude, right?
yeah.
Sword master, and he turns out to be a traitor in a sense, but I don't know. I kind of thought he was someone to be sympathetic for, but and then again, I kind of had, like I said, before because of Vikings, I have a soft spot for Ragnar Lodbrok, I've forgotten his name again. What's his name? Desmond, thank you. Yeah. But you always refer to him by his last name, though.
Thank you very much for proving this point so eloquently. You can't even remember the number 1 character in the show.
There's so many back and forths, and it's just, and it's only been 5 episodes, folks.
Yeah.
For those of you transporting at home, right? Yeah. Again, I don't know. It's tiring, right? It's pretty, and the special effects are nice, but it's tiring.
Well. We're about to jump to our watch list, and I will tell you all the other things I did before I watched Dune Prophecy. It was a long list.
Let's jump into that. Yeah, I did watch a little bit of Secret Level. I read ahead, but I was going to have a follow up on that. But I have more information. I think Secret Level is better for you two than it is for me, because I look at this stuff and I've heard of these games before, but I have no context.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's jump into the watch list, and JPK is up first.
Yeah. So I'll start with Black Doves, which is a new series that is dropped in its entirety on Netflix, because that's what they do. It's only 6 episodes. It is a spy series, but kind of different than Slow Horses, which is one I think that we are all kind of enjoying on Apple TV Plus. It's focused around 2 spies. One is like a deeply embedded spy who is undercover and has been undercover for years, stealing information. By the way,
you need to watch The Agency. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I've heard that one's really good too. That's on the list. And the other spy is more or less an assassin. And it's basically about the 2 of them who get sort of embroiled in this, sort of ongoing scandal. It's all set in London. It's set at Christmas time, so it's kind of if you're going to watch it, I'd recommend maybe watching it before the 25th, just because it'll have a vibe that's kind of fun. It really kind of helps that the whole thing's set around Christmas time. It's not as...
Is it a Christmas show?
London is a character, and London at Christmas time is very memorable, and it's clearly all filmed there, and it's important that it's in London, and it's important that it's Christmas time because of the connections between the characters. It comes up more than once. So it is relevant to the plot. I'll say yes, it is probably important that it's Christmas time, although if you'd set it around a different holiday, it could have worked. Just something about London at Christmas time that just kind of works for me. But it's Keira Knightley, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean, Bend It Like Beckham, absolutely. And it's also Ben Whishaw, who I think is maybe one of the best actors on the planet. I've never seen him and thought, well, that was a waste of my time. He's always making interesting choices. I think he's just a really interesting performer. He plays simultaneously somebody who is a ruthless killer and also very deeply emotionally conflicted. We learn a lot through the series about who he is and how he came to be what he is and everything else. It's fantastic. I really, really love this series. I watched the whole thing over the course of a couple of days. Like I say, only 6 episodes, about an hour a piece, so it's a pretty easy kind of watch. I kind of had rekindled my love of spy stuff by enjoying all the Slow Horses this last year, and this was like a lovely little sort of end of the year, pre-Christmas kind of piece. They've already said they're going to do a second season of it. It's easy to see that you could do this time and time again, and I would watch every single part of it. So yeah, it's a little outside of our sci-fi kind of stuff, but it's definitely, as far as a little bit of action, a little bit of humor, kind of all the things that we kind of love in our TV. It kind of ticks off all those bases, and the chemistry between Wishaw and Keira Knightley is great, especially because like Ben Wishaw's gay and has played a number of gay characters in his roles, and here they're perfectly fine with the fact that he is a gay character and that it has nothing to diminish who he is and what he does and everything else. It just is such a beautifully organic character where his queerness is just part of who he is and part of a very complex character. It's really quite beautifully done, and his relationship with her, because there isn't all that sort of sexual tension stuff that you would normally get in the show, is really good. Really, really good.
So is it like sort of in the same time frame as Slow Horses, like the same?
Yeah, it's now.
MI6, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, again, so the difference between this and that is they work for an independent spy firm. They don't work for a government. They work for a place that gathers information and sells it to the highest bidder. So they have spies all over the place. They have killers all over the place, and they do jobs. And they sell the information they gather to whoever will pay the most, and they kill whoever pays the most. And so that's the thing that kind of separates it from something like Slow Horses or The Agency or things like that.
Right. Cool. The reason I asked about the Christmas movie thing was I heard a joke the other day that Seven is a Christmas movie.
I mean,
it has the Bible and Brad Pitt gets a present.
There you go. That's the real controversy.
I've gotten worse presents than that one, but
Yep.
As a matter of fact, if you guys want to get me that this year, that's fine. I would take that.
All right.
Okay. Secret Level. You mentioned that, Tim, is a new series. It's an anthology. It's an animated anthology series that's on Amazon Prime. It's created by Tim Miller, and if the name doesn't quickly ring a bell, you'll realize that Tim Miller was actually the guy who did the Deadpool movie, the original Deadpool, and has gone on to do other movies since then.
Isn't he the guy that did the Watchmen, or am I thinking of a different guy?
Tim Miller? I don't.
Comic book artist, right? Tim Miller? Like, isn't Tim Miller from the comic book world?
He did Deadpool in 2016, then he did Dark Fate, the Terminator movie. He did Love, Death, and Robots, which I know we've all watched on Netflix. And yeah, this is sort of his latest thing. He was in animation, I think, before. He did like title sequences and trailers and stuff like that. I think that's what his sort of pre-life was sort of like. And then he moved over to like he did visual effects and animation and stuff like that, and then moved into movies, and now has sort of moved back towards animation, which we're lucky for. So Secret Level is basically, it's 10 short episodes ranging from 8 to 12 minutes a piece, set around a bunch of different video game titles. How they decided on what they got and what they chose, I'm really curious to know more about, but it covers a pretty eclectic number of things. I've watched half of them. I watched the half of them on which I knew, and I haven't watched the other half yet, but I will, even though I don't know them, just because I think it's a really interesting project, and I'd like to sort of see what the rest of them are like. But some of the ones that'll be familiar to people, so Dungeons and Dragons, sort of video game, adaptations, Pac-Man, Mega Man. I watched Spelunky, which is a game that my daughter and I played together. Trying to think of what else I watched, but it's
Is Mortal Kombat.
No, and there's a bunch of it certainly opens itself to a ton of other things that they could do down the road.
Right. I watched the Mortal Kombat one. I watched them in order that they are listed. So
yeah,
I haven't watched all of them. I got as far as Pac-Man, and I haven't gone back yet.
Yeah, the first one's Dungeons and Dragons, but they also did stuff I haven't seen. So like Sifu, New Worlds. They did Unreal Tournament. That was the combat one.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, they did Warhammer 40,000 or 40K, for if you will. Pac-Man, Crossfire. I'm just looking at the list here. Armored Core. I haven't watched that. Outer Worlds. I have that one. I'm going to watch tonight because I have watched my daughter play Outer Worlds. Yeah, the Mega Man, let's see, so Exodus, and yeah, Spelunky, Concord. So there's 14, 15, there's 15 of these little mini episodes that are up and available. The animation is gorgeous. They're done, it's almost like Star Wars Visions. They're kind of done by different teams, so the animation suits the style of the game. It's not like 8-bit weird retro, like they're really like kind of taking the worlds as they are and then doing their own things with them. I urge everyone to if they're willing, watch the Pac-Man one. It is bonkers. It is one of the weirdest things I've ever watched, but it's really, really good. I'm not going to spoil anything on it. Just make yourself some time. It takes like 8 minutes. Watch the Pac-Man episode if you're going to watch one. It is crazy. It is so far from what I imagined they would do, and I was so happy that they did something that was not. I was like, what is it going to be like? Oh no, I'm trapped in a maze. I better eat these ghosts. Kinda, but way crazier. At the beginning
of the episode, yeah.
Way crazier. It's a really neat concept of like, let's just kind of dig into, these games and sort of expand the lore and tell something interesting about them and kind of let these animators and these storytellers kind of just do a thing, and it's really neat. So yeah, I would say if you're into gaming, have a look. Again, they're not really correlated as far as like it's an anthology. They don't interconnect or anything, so you can really just pick and choose and enjoy what you like. But as I say, I'm going to go back and watch a bunch more of them because the animation is gorgeous. A couple of them have pretty decent voice casts. I saw one of them that I watched had Ariana Greenblatt, who was the young Ahsoka, and she was young Gamora, and she was in the well-loved Borderlands movie recently. But yeah, like it's a really creative project, and I was really impressed with it. So yeah, make some time for that over the holidays. Quickly, I'll just do my last two. So there's a great Instagram channel I found a while ago. I wanted to flag here for our Star Trek fans. It's just called Weird Star Trek Merch. It is this guy who basically just does all these little videos and photographs of all the weird merch that he's been able to collect over the years from the Star Trek universe. So it's completely random. But from Christmas ornaments to just all these little, you realize just how incredibly, weirdly, massively merchandised Star Trek has become over the years of all the different things that are in it. And yeah, you get to go down the rabbit hole of the Halloween costumes and the Christmas ornaments, and my favorite one so far is the Star Trek wall clock that looks like the Next Generation insignia badges that simultaneously tells you the actual time in analog and the stardate time in Star Trek time. Just so weirdly random, but yeah, this guy's clearly having a great time. He's clearly, he loves it. He's a hardcore Trekker. He wears his uniform to work. This is somebody who loves this stuff. And yeah, the birthday balloons that say with Odo on them that say "party till you liquefy." It's so random, and it's wonderful. If you're a Trek fan, again, it's like Lower Decks. It's all done with love. It's so much fun. Check it out. We'll have the link in the show notes. And finally just wanted to hype up next week we're going to get What If season 3, so that's on my appointment to do. They are doing it like they did last season. They are aggressively pushing out episodes. It's one episode a day for the Christmas holidays, so I think it starts on the 21st, 22nd, and they just keep knocking out episodes from there. So I think over the next couple of weeks we can maybe talk about that a little bit on our show.
Disney? On Disney?
Yes, Disney Plus. So
okay.
Something to do over the holidays. You're going to get a bunch of the final season of What If.
Cool. All right. So I have a couple of quick hits here. One is The Sticky, which is a follow-up on More Than Just Code, actually, not this show, but Jaime might be interested in this. It's a fictitious retelling of the thieving of the Great Maple Syrup Reserves. You know, when we talked about this on the show, I may remember back, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So this is a show. Just it's funny. It's a Canadian production. I think it's only 6 episodes long, and I think it's the first of 2 seasons. So it might be, but it's a lot of mayhem and bumbling around the whole concept of stealing maple syrup. Another show I stumbled across, I keep seeing this on the top 10 on Apple TV. I never really got into it, but I fell down the rabbit hole and watched Bad Sisters. The finale comes out, I think, Friday or next Wednesday. I've watched 2 seasons of it now, and it's kind of like you can't just watch one. It's about these 5 Irish sisters, 4 of whom decide that the 5th one's husband has to go. And they go about dispatching them, right? So, yeah, so it's a really good show and lots of fun and lots of references to Irish things, Jonathan, which I think you'll enjoy, right? So,
yep, yeah, that was actually, it's been on our watch list for a bit. We just haven't got to it yet.
Sure, and so I was, you know, I've been looking at some of the stuff. Timothée Chalamet is obviously the Dune connection for us, but he's coming out with the new Bob Dylan movie, which we've talked about a couple of times. And so I saw some interviews with him, and then I saw, I was watching a Colbert interview with him, and he mentioned that the first time he was on Colbert, he was quite young. And so I went back and found that interview and watched it, and it was just before he had done Beautiful Boy, which the only thing I can tell you about Beautiful Boy is it's like Basketball Diaries. That's all I'm going to say. I completely misunderstood why this young kid got nominated for an Academy Award, but watch the movie, you'll see why, right? And him and Steve Carell, they do masterful performances as actors. Okay. The last one is the 420 movie. I just noticed yesterday that it's a 99-cent rental this week. This is the latest installment from Kevin Smith. You may think that 420 has a particular meaning, but it doesn't. It's the time that the movie is playing at that the kid wants to go with the girl to see. Lots of, you know, if you're a Kevin Smith fan, a lot of Easter eggs in it, a lot of cameos in it. Yeah, it's basically a retelling of a time when Kevin Smith was a young guy, and you know he was into movies, and he learned about movies and writing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I think it's sort of a Kevin Smith-ish semi-autobiographical, but it's not, right? But it's a fun movie. It's worthwhile watching. For 99 cents, you can't go wrong. And that's it for me. So over to you, Jaime, for your picks.
Yeah, one is a trailer for Death of a Unicorn coming in 2025. Stars Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd. Also has Will Poulter, I think his name is, where they accidentally run over an animal that is apparently a unicorn, and then it gets weird and dark. It's really kind of hard to describe the trailer, but it's looking kind of fun in that cabin in the woods style of movie. If anybody's seen that one, dark comedy kind of thing.
Yeah, I saw this trailer as well. It was a little confusing at first because you're like, "What's happening?" And then you're like, "Oh!" And yeah, it's kind of a weird mishmash, but it looks interesting.
I'm sitting here watching a bunch of trailers on my iPad with the sound off, and that was one of the ones that went by a little while ago, and I'm like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah,
cool. What else you got?
I also have Superman and Lois. So all 4 seasons are now complete. They've completed the series. That is the Tyler Hoechlin Superman series. It's a CW show, so it's not going to be perfect and for folks who've heard me talk about this show before, I kind of enjoy it as less of the Superman doing Superman stuff and more Superman dealing with ordinary everyday problems, like teenage boys doing teenage boys things or fighting taxes, like all sorts of stuff that I thought was a different take. We've not really seen a family man Superman in live action. And now you can watch the entire thing.
Have you seen the whole all 4 seasons?
I have, and it has a very definitive end epilogue for this whole series.
Yeah, I think I watched the first 2 seasons of it and just fell off my radar.
Yeah,
Where is it available?
It was on CW. I don't know. You'd have to look at Just Watch to see where it's available.
Jaime, does it? I know this was sort of also not just the end of this series, but the end of the Arrowverse writ large, right? This was the last surviving show from that thing that started way back with Arrow and continued through, probably half a dozen shows over a good period of time. Does it give any kind of due to that, or is it just sort of focused on this?
No, it's just focused on this. And although it shares the same actor, actually a couple actors from the Supergirl show, my understanding is it's not in continuity with Supergirl, which actually makes sense given what I saw through the series. Like it couldn't fit into the Supergirl, Tyler Hoechlin Superman. So just a different telling is what it would be.
Okay.
By the way, this just in, I'm looking at, there seems to be a new Captain America trailer. I don't think we've seen before.
Oh, really? A newer one than the one we've seen with the President Hulk?
Yeah. This is a different one, definitely for sure. So just I'll put a link in the show notes so people can watch it. Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you. Where would they find you?
Right now, you can find me on Instagram as @JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
Cool. And Jaime, if people want in touch with you, let me guess.
I'm on Twitter as
@Dev with the hair.
All right. Yeah, it's just like his How's It Going? We just replay the same clip over and over every time.
Jaime leaves. You guys don't know this. Jaime leaves early. We just put the rest of that stuff in for him.
Yeah. He's an AI. All right. Which Mark thought for years, because I don't think you guys ever met, right? All right. Well, my name is Timitra, TIMMITRA on most of the socials. And by the way, I just discovered I still have an AOL account, and that's my handle on AOL. So Blue Sky, Mastodon, probably the best places to get a hold of me. Until next time, we'll see you in the future. Oh, and by the way, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays,
and
kids.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Crazy Kwanzaa.
And yeah, don't forget Festivus for the rest of us.
That's right.
And in the after show, we'll be doing the airing of grievances. Right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
All right. So we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Like as a genre, or
Well, I think I know what yacht rock is. That's the Margaritaville stuff, right? But
well, yes and no.
Or is it the I bought a boat guy from Saturday Night Live? Or?
No, although again, I think it's all kind of interconnected. No, so there's a documentary that's available on HBO, or so I'm guessing Max, and here in Canada on Crave, and it's part of the Music Box series, the sort of music-focused documentaries that HBO has been co-producing with Spotify and The Ringer. So it's called Yacht Rock, a documentary, D-O-C-K, and it is a documentary that basically examines this sort of musical stretch from the mid-70s to the mid-80s that saw the rise of all these great studio musicians kind of for a very short period of time sliding into the front seat, like Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald, and they're sort of talking about where these artists fit. And it's all tied to this weird phenomenon that came about because there was this group who, in the sort of last phase of internet pre-YouTube, did a web series called Yacht Rock. And it was basically a pretty loving but definitely comedic poke at this genre of music where they saw all these sort of threads coming together with all these performers, and they kind of had some fun with it, and it kind of took on a life of its own to the point where now it's a whole subgenre on Spotify. You can find countless playlists that cover this time period, and a lot of the artists are quite loved. There's all these like bands that have popped up that are like tribute bands, so like Yachtly Crew and all these different bands that have kind of turned this into almost like a tribute show where they play some of these hits and they dance and everybody wears captain's hats, and it's kind of a whole thing. But for you, Tim, it's particularly interesting because in this documentary, which I had started watching a couple of weeks ago and finally finished last night, it starts with Steely Dan. They basically start with the two of them. They talk about, Fagan and Becker, and just how they were this sort of catalyst for bringing on all these amazing studio musicians to work with them to really get that sound that they wanted, that sort of, high level musicianship, and how that kind of sparked a lot of these other sort of longtime studio musicians to kind of start getting together and working together on different projects. And that leads us to, Toto. It leads us to, the Doobie Brothers. It leads us to all these sort
Michael
of
McDonald and
and just how all these threads kind of intertwine, and then how they're also, these are the studio musicians who were the people playing on all these incredible hit albums through the 70s and 80s. Like, these were the guys who played, background or live sets with the Eagles, the Doobie Brothers, Quincy Jones, and then like Toto was the band that played most of the music on like Thriller by Michael Jackson. Like, these were some of the most
Steve Lukather, yeah.
Absolutely. These were some of like the most talented studio musicians in Los Angeles, and it kind of how all this sound kind of worked in and out. And the documentary explores how, the thread of what makes yacht rock is that it's kind of got this jazz influence, not a rock influence, not a country influence. It's kind of jazz into pop as opposed to rock into pop, as opposed to, a lot of the other sort of things. And it's a really fascinating watch about something that, people didn't really recognize it. I guess back in the day, they kind of called it the LA sound. But it kind of has, when you look at all the threads of how it comes together, it's a brilliant look at this sort of time and place, and how like artists like Christopher Cross can come out of nowhere and have like the biggest album in the world for like a couple years and then just disappear again, or how Michael McDonald can be on virtually every damn album for like a decade because he worked with so many different artists, right?
Yeah.
But I highly recommend. Very, very well done, well made. They have Lukather and the brothers from Toto, and they have like all these people, but they also have people like Questlove and Thundercat and all these people on who are like contemporaries who are like, yeah, I grew up a black kid in an urban setting and I love this music and here's why. It's really interesting. And for you, Tim, as the absolute teaser in there, is they actually spoke to Fagan, who notoriously does not like to speak to anybody.
I've seen lots of interviews with him over the years.
Recently?
Yeah. He was on Paul Schaefer has a podcast that he does where he has musicians on the podcast and they talk about the stuff and they play the stuff, and because Paul Schaefer can play what these guys played, right? Yeah. So it's kind of weird, to be honest with you, as a podcast, but yeah, it's on YouTube. And it's funny because as you said that, I went into YouTube and I typed in yacht rock, and you can just follow that thread like for days. Like, oh god, yeah, there are playlists, there are, there's a video called Is Van Halen Yacht Rock, and there's all kinds of stuff that comes up when you and it's interesting. It's really polarizing too. Like what people will debate long and hard about. Well, what about Hall & Oates? No, well, actually, they're more rock pop, not necessarily jazz pop, so they don't really fit. Well, what about the Eagles? Well, yeah, but they're more country pop as opposed to jazz pop, so they don't really fit. It's fascinating what people argue for and against as part of this sort of movement. But anyway, it's a really enjoyable doc. I mean, I love a good music doc anytime, but this one really kind of, especially considering. And that's on Crave. Is it on Crave? It's on HBO in the States. Yeah, right? It's HBO in the States and Crave here in Canada. And it's cool. Yeah, it's definitely worth the 90 minutes or whatever it is. Yeah, it's one of those terminologies that I've heard over the past, but like I said, I couldn't remember what it meant. But yeah, but now that you say that, I do. Yeah, I've heard that mentioned. Kenny Loggins, Loggin Messina. Yep. Yeah, and if you go onto Spotify and put in yacht rock, there's hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of playlists. But like Questlove has made playlists on there of yacht rock and is like, here's what I think yacht rock is and why this matters. And again, it's a really interesting sort of because it's weird to talk about a musical movement after the fact. Usually when things are happening, you're like, well, that's a thing, right? You sort of recognize in the moment, you're like, oh, it's the Seattle sound, right? Oh, okay, it's grunge. Okay, grunge is the thing. Grunge is the thing right now. It's weird to have somebody retroactively go back and be like, hey, remember that thing 40 years ago? That was a thing. Yeah, but heavy metal has been argued over the years as to what that actually means. And I remember them talking about Led Zeppelin as heavy metal, and also like Helter Skelter is the first heavy metal song. And yet, the people who would argue that they're heavy metal fans would not mention either one of those two things in heavy metal, right? No, but then you go back to, they did a great documentary maybe 5-6 years ago called A Band Called Death, right? About the all black rock, heavy metal band from Detroit. And, most people had no sense of that, but they were arguably the most important metal band when they first started, right? So, yeah. But anyway, really, really fun. I like exploring that stuff. I like having discussions about, the big picture and how these things go. So our next podcast is it yacht rock? Is it yacht rock? No, I think there's probably several dozen podcasts about that too. But all right, yeah. Yacht rock, not yacht rock. Yeah, but the consensus seemed to be as part of this that Steely Dan's Asia is like the best album ever made. All of them were like Gaucho, all of them were like Asia. Asia is it. They were like Asia was so important because every music nerd knew that was the one that made your stereo play the best. Yeah, I'd love to get an Asia T-shirt for the record. Yeah. I'm sure there must be stuff out there. All right. Well, you'd be surprised. I looked, but I might just have to make my own. Yeah, really. Just that red and white stripe, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's funny because you mentioned that, because I've watched tons of documentaries on that. Well, but that particular album, because it's a central album in my life, obviously. But yeah. Okay, so now I want to know, Jaime, so what's your relationship to that genre of music? You're younger than both of us by a measure. I'm curious. I played some of the stuff and I was talking about yacht rock to my wife. It's mom rock to him. Yeah, it's mom rock to him. My wife did not recognize, she didn't recognize Christopher Cross's Sailing earlier when I played it for her, and I was like, this thing was everywhere when I was a kid. Wow, she's so lucky, yeah. Yeah, I think it blends in, it crosses over into my life. Would I have to maybe listen to some of these? Like, oh, yeah, I know which song this is, without being able to name it in like a music trivia sort of way? I remember grocery shopping with Carol about 25 years ago, and we were walking through the Loblaws, and all of a sudden we hear Steely Dan come on the music.
Yeah, I mean the
That's how you know you're old, folks. So when you hear your music on the Muzak in an elevator or at a grocery store, you're old.
Oh, but you know what? There's a flip of that for the generation I'm in and the generation that Jaime's in, which is when a young female artist does an acoustic interpretation of it. That's when you know that your music has then jumped the shark. When like some girl on YouTube has done the acoustic version of like an Outkast song or Gangsta's Paradise or something. You're like, oh, my brain.
What did I hear the other day? I think I heard a girl singing on piano, like single solo piano, like a Nirvana tune or something like that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that.
Who's the robot in the Superman trailer? That's what I want to know.
It looks like it's Kellex. So for nerds like me, Kellex is basically the housekeeper butler for the Fortress of Solitude. That is our best guess. The collective nerd unconscious that's what we think it might be. Hence why he's sad that Kellex seems to be lying there deactivated. I don't know what else it would be. I mean, it looks like a Kryptonian robot to me. But what do I know? I've just read a ton of comic books.
Yeah, that's why we ask you.
I'm gonna put Questlove's Yacht Rock playlist into our Spotcasts Slack, so you can have a look there. It's called. So he did it in dedication to Anthony Bourdain after he passed away, and he calls it Questlove Defense of Yacht Rock and Dentist Office Pop.
Dentist office. Well, this is what I'm saying. Like you hear it in the dentist office, right?
But yeah, like, you know, and again, it's funny that they sort of thread the needle of how black music from the 1960s, R&B, soul music, even funk influenced these white artists who then were making a lot of the studio stuff, which then in turn influenced black artists to try and push their music into the mainstream. So you got like Al Jarreau and George Benson and like these artists who then were like basically full circling it from like black music influences white kids influence the black kids who then, you know, like it's funny how all that kind of ties together.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
And as a bonus, you get to listen to some really cheesy music if you play this playlist. Who's looking for some Toto? Who's looking for some Robbie Dupree? Some Kenny Loggins, Boz Scaggs. This is like every dollar bin of records I've gone through over the past 20 years. Chicago, Ambrosia, Seals and Crofts. Yeah, enjoy. At the very least, it'll get you out of having to hear Christmas music for a few minutes.
Right.
I was at the mall with my wife for several hours yesterday trying to wrap up Christmas shopping and was ready to cut my ears off and protest afterwards.
With Mariah Carey blasting your ears?
Mariah Carey, that Wham song gets played a lot. There was one place that was playing like the Boney M Christmas album, which always reminds me of my grandparents. They used to play that constantly in the 80s.
Need parts now? O'ReillyAuto.com offers in-store pickup, same-day home delivery, or next-day home shipping. Get more parts your way at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.